Hear ye, ye patriots of the earth. Another wannabe tyrant bends the knee to the people's champion. The MAGA king reigns. Observe.
What about the idea that he thinks that the press is the enemy?
Well, I think I'm going to try to talk him out of that idea. I don't think the press is the enemy. And I don't think, he's also, you've probably grown in the last 8 years. He has too. This is not the case. The press is not the enemy.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too.
He's the press, and he's saying, I hope you're right, because he knows the press is the enemy. They lie, they cheat, they manipulate. All they do is make excuses for the ill-willing tyrants, the heads of corporations and so-called organizations of equity and other bullshit. The press is the enemy. They just are.
Have you talked? Let's go persuade him of this. No, let's
have you talked to him about it?
But you and I should go. Let's go talk to him.
If we could try.
I really don't. I think that this is absolutely. I don't think he's going to see it the same way. But maybe I'll be wrong.
Was that always your thought, by the way?
What I've seen so far is
that. Of course not. When they still thought the Dems had this in the bag, they were like, what? Of course we will silence them. They platformed them. Parler, no more hosting for you. That was you, wasn't it, Baldi? Yeah. Patriot Farms remembers. And Patriots also remember. Ooh, I never thought of Patriot Farms. Oh, it's Patriot Farms. Well, no, it's Patriot Farms, because I feel like it.
He is calmer than he was the first time and more confident, more settled.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Jeff Bezos, who is trying to get on Trump's good side, like a vast majority of the formerly Trump deranged billionaires. All of a sudden, they've come out and had a new transformation, okay? They are embracing Trump. Now, I don't know if I should feel good about this. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with this. But hey, at the end of the day, if these people are sincere, right, they sincerely want to help this country be a better place, right, and they're willing to work with Trump in order to do so, I support it, right, because I think that what it would...
I think they have to prove themselves to the people, man. They can't just be trusted because they say so, especially Zuckerberg. That man is a snake. He's betrayed everyone he's ever worked with. It's not going to change now. Take whatever gifts they bring, but keep the snake outside. These people can't be trusted. They just can't be trusted.
Take to solve America's problems is some of America's greatest minds and entrepreneurs coming together, right? Everybody working together to solve the problems, right? To lead the country into the future. And one of the biggest problems that we have is the debt problem. Okay, our debt to GDP ratio is the highest that it's been since World War II, and Jeff Bezos is essentially going to chime in on that issue and also the issue of the media as well too. And I want to react to it because I think he makes some fascinating points here that I really want to talk about. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around that we're going to see. I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him. Because we do have too much regulation in this country. This country is so set up to grow. By the way, all of our problems, all of our economic problems, like if you look at the...
Dude, this doesn't mean you can have slaves in your warehouse. You know how you do? Motherfuckers don't have time to even go to the bathroom and shit. If they reduce regulations, you can't have slaves. I won't put it beyond you.
The deficit, and I mean, the debt, the national debt, and how gigantic it is as a portion of GDP. These are real problems, and they're real long-term problems. And the way you get out of them is by outgrowing them. You're going to solve the problem of the national debt by making it a smaller percentage of GDP, not by shrinking the national debt, but by growing the GDP. You have to grow the denominator. And that means you have to grow GDP at 3, 4, 5% a year, and let the national debt grow slower than that. If you can do that, this is a very manageable problem. So we need a growth orientation in this country. This is the most important thing, a growth mindset. And we are the luckiest country in the world. We have all these natural resources, including energy independence. We have the best risk capital system in the world by far. So, people get confused about why does the United States have so much venture success, so much entrepreneurial success? Why are the big tech companies here and not somewhere else? What's really going on with all this dynamism in this country compared to what we see around elsewhere in the world? Right. And there are a bunch of reasons for that, but the biggest one, 8 of 10 points there, is that we have better risk capital. So it's not the banking system. We have a good banking system, but so does Europe. Right. What's different here is that you can raise, $50 million of seed capital to do something that only has a 10% chance of working. That's crazy. But the people who are giving you that seed capital know that their expected value is still positive in many cases, or they're at least gambling that that's true. That risk capital system that we have in this country is turning out to be very hard for other countries to duplicate. So we have that. We have, we speak English, and English is turning into the lingua franca of the whole world. It's there's so many advantages here, but we are burdened by excessive permitting and regulation. You can't build a bridge and all these things. You know what they are. We see these examples all the time. We need to be able to build solar fields and everything else.
So you're optimistic.
Yeah. So Jeff Bezos is making some good points here, right? And he is right about the fact that in order to solve the debt problem, we're going to have to essentially outgrow it, right? The economy is going to have to grow at a rate of 3 to 5% per year. Now, this is a pipe dream for most high debt countries, right? Because a country with high debt does not have the money to invest, right? In order for a country to grow, you need investment. However, in the case of the United States, which Jeff Bezos points out here, we're different because our capital markets, our risk capital markets are so deep, right? We have such an advanced system that we don't necessarily need government spending in order to get those types of investments that is needed to grow the economy at a 3 to 5% rate, right? Which is what would be needed to essentially stabilize our debt to GDP ratio, right? Which is something that, again, we have to do, okay? And the way that we outgrew our debt last time, our debt to GDP ratio was this high, which was after World War II, was through growth, okay? It took growth over consecutive decades in order to reduce the debt to GDP ratio. Now, the way typically that a country would achieve this type of growth, the type of investments that would be made that would account for that type of growth would be investments in infrastructure. And no, I'm not talking about what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden tried to do, right? Which was to spend $40 billion on broadband internet for rural America and nobody got connected to it, right? Or to spend billions of dollars building charging stations across the country and no chargers were built, right? I'm not talking about wasting money like that, okay? I'm talking about actual infrastructure investments that have worked. Like, for example, railroad expansion between 1860 and 1890 accounted for a...
Also, these things shouldn't take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. The Chinese are building roads in a week, in a month. Why is yours taking 5 years? This is insane.
25% increase in GDP. And then later on, investments in the interstate highway system drove a quarter of the country's productivity growth between 1950 and 1989. So that is possible in the 21st century. And what is the equivalent of that in the 21st century? Well, a lot of people think that that's going to come from data centers, right? Because of the rise of artificial intelligence, you need these data centers, which do require a whole lot of energy, okay, in order to maintain. And with that comes economic growth, because you're going to have a bunch of industries and jobs that will be created as a result of maintaining these data centers, and the fact that you have companies that are utilizing these data centers with AI technology, right? So a lot of people believe that AI is going to be like this century's equivalent of the transcontinental railroad, right? In regards to how we can grow at 3 to 5% per year and to potentially outgrow our debt. Now, you don't need the politicians to fund this type of infrastructure, but policy is still crucial, okay? Because in many states, utility companies have said that, listen, the energy demands for these data centers is too much, right? So what you actually really need is investments in energy, more energy infrastructure, and it needs to be built quickly, right? Which means that we have to reduce regulations, okay? We have to reform the permitting process, which is the key reason why it takes literally forever to build anything in this country, right? To do any infrastructure projects, we take way too long. Have you guys checked in on the high-speed rail in California, right? That they've spent billions of dollars on and they haven't built anything? Well, again, it's because of the permitting process. It's because of all these regulations that stifle economic growth. So you spend all this money and all of these, regulatory agencies and companies, they're getting paid, right? But there's nothing actually really being built, okay? There's no real economic growth associated with this money that is not being spent on actually building out the infrastructure that.
This is precisely the California homelessness problem. How can you spend $30 billion and have more homeless people than you had before you spent the $30 billion? The hell did you spend it on? How many houses can you build for $30 billion? How many apartments? How many people could that house? And there's way cheaper ways. There's those container houses and stuff, like 20K, 30K, house with a living room, bathroom, electrical infrastructure, bedroom. What the hell did you spend $30 billion on? It's theft. What else could it possibly be?
Is needed to facilitate growth in this country, right? So I'm just trying to give you guys a solid example of what Jeff Bezos is talking about, because I think a lot of times, people talk in generalities about reducing regulations and how that is going to help the country grow. But I want to give you guys a solid example of how that could work in the 21st century and what that actually looks like with today's modern technology and what we really need. So data centers are a great example of what we're talking about and what Jeff Bezos is talking about and how we could potentially try to grow out of this debt problem. And it's an important conversation in the context of Doge and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy trying to downsize the government, trying to cut spending. And the reason why is because, realistically speaking, although I am optimistic about Doge, I'm also not delusional, okay, in regards to understanding why we have this debt/deficit problem in the first place, which is that the politicians in Washington are drunk on spending, right? And once you start spending money on some new government program, it's extremely hard to cut, right? And a vast majority of our debt is due to government programs that we really can't cut, okay? Not without extreme, massive backlash. Like, for example, Social Security, Medicare, the military, those things. If you really want to downsize the federal budget, you got to cut from there, right? You got to make those cuts. But as soon as you start talking about making cuts there, oh man, you're going to have a hard time, right? You're not going to have a long career as a politician. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not anything that we can do about it. That doesn't mean that we don't need to make the cuts. We definitely still need to make the cuts. But more so than anything, we really got to be talking more about growth, because realistically, again, nobody's really going to cut, right? Politicians aren't going to cut as much as they should because they lose their jobs, right? That's just how democracy works, right? That's just.
But that's the beauty of Elon being the one to do it. Because this time, the people want it, and Elon can show it's this politician who voted against it, And this is why, because they have this factory that makes bombs in their state, and this is the rich guy who paid them through lobbyists to keep this money flowing. So this is the people stealing the money from the people to give to their rich friends. This is how much you'd have if they didn't do that. Elon can show all that. This will increase the pressure tremendously. I honestly believe they can do it, but it's mostly hopeful thinking. We'll see. We'll see.
What it is, okay? People do not like to have money taken away from them, even if it's for the good of the country. They don't want to suffer the hardships that we need to suffer in order to actually fix the issue via cutting. So fixing the issue via cutting is not, it's not going to be super realistic because the politicians don't have the stones to do it, and the American people won't. They just won't take it, right? They just are not going to be okay with, you know, grandma's social security check getting cut in half, right? They're not going to be okay with that. It's just not going to work. So, you know, again, this is why this conversation is so important. You got to be realistic about it.
Optimistic
I'm super optimistic
about this president. And the reason I ask
I'm
is because
very optimistic that President Trump is serious about this regulatory agenda,
Right.
and I think I think he has a good chance of succeeding.
what about the idea that he thinks that the press is the enemy?
Well, I think I'm going to try to talk him out of that idea. I don't think the press is the enemy, and I don't think, you know, he's also. You've probably grown in the last 8 years. He has too. Like, it's, you know, this is not the case. The press is not the enemy.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too.
Have you talked?
But let's go persuade him of this. No, let's
Have you
do
talked to him about it?
But you and I should go. Let's go talk to him.
If we could try.
I really don't. I think that this is absolutely. I don't think he's going to see it the same way. But maybe I'll be wrong.
Was that always your thought, by the way?
What I've seen so far is that he is calmer than he was the first time and more confident, more settled.
Yeah, so what Jeff Bezos is essentially doing here is he's asking for forgiveness, right? Because he owns the Washington Post, and the Washington Post has been what Trump would probably define as an enemy, right, of the people, okay? And I think that Trump is, I think he's accurate in his assessment of the media, right? As somebody that covers the media every single day, it is hard for me to come up here and to say that Trump should forgive the media when the media, from day one, right, the first day that he essentially declared that he was running for president, they have been attacking the guy. They've been going after the guy. They have made his life a living hell. I mean, I would argue that the media is somewhat responsible for the assassination attempts on the president because of how much they radicalize people in this country, right? Specifically, outlets like MSNBC, right? Far left outlets in this country, like the Washington Post, okay, the New York Times, ABC, CBS, CNN, they radicalize so many people in this country, and you've seen so much political violence as a result of that radicalization. It would be hard for me not to argue that, hey, the media is a problem, right? They're a huge issue in this country. And I'm not sure if Jeff Bezos can actually change Trump's mind on that, okay? If I was President Trump, you're not going to change my mind about how I feel about the media, right? I mean, again, these people.
That's so true. I agree 100%. And as if that wasn't bad enough, just remember how they covered the first assassination attempt. That there's no way Trump could see that and not think these people not only hate him, but actually wish he were dead. Like they literally wish he wasn't here anymore. That's that's brutal. Imagine what you would feel if that were you and you realize how much these people hate you. You see it for yourself. Even when an attempt is made on your life where you barely escape through, a majority of them are like, damn, so close. Seriously. Oh, there were loud noises. Trump leaves stage after random loud noises. For days, they said that bullshit. You're just supposed to forget? Come on, Doc.
They essentially declared war on President Trump, right? They lied, they gaslit, okay, they misled the folks, okay. They have been spreading hate, okay, throughout their airwaves against the president. And that type of stuff, man, I'm not sure if it can necessarily be forgiven just because Trump won. So, hey, Jeff Bezos, he can try, right? He can try to convince the president. I just don't think it's going to work. I think part of the reason why he's doing what he's doing and he's saying what he's saying is because, you know, hey, he needs them space contracts, okay? And also on top of that, the Washington Post is failing, okay, his liberal newspaper. And I think that he wants to kind of change people's perceptions of the media because those perceptions have essentially hurt his pocketbooks, right? It's hurt the bottom line of the Washington Post, a media outlet that he has to subsidize. And I think that's the reason why he really wants the president to change his mind in regards to how he talks about the media, is because, again, that type of criticism of the media is one of the main reasons why the media is failing. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.
What about